The moment the door clicked softly behind her husband's cousin, Leela felt the air in the room shift. It wasn't loud, it wasn't abrupt, but it carried a weight that made her heart skip a beat. She had been reading in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, the quiet hum of the clock filling the space between thoughts. And then, just like that, the room felt different. She looked up. A tall, lean figure lingered by the doorway. His eyes met hers, polite yet searching, as if he were measuring the room for more than just space. She noticed the subtle crease in his brow, the careful way he adjusted the strap of his bag, and a strange sense of familiarity tugged at her memory. She didn't know him well, not really, but something about his presence felt like a gentle ripple across still water. "Leela?" her husband called from the kitchen, voice light and unaware of the shift she already felt. "Yes," she replied softly, standing and smoothing her sweater. Her fingers traced the fabric, grounding herself. She wasn't usually anxious around guests, but there was something delicate and fragile about this evening, something unspoken. Her husband, Tomas, appeared beside her, his arm brushing lightly against her. He gave a small, reassuring smile. "Lucas is here," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes mirrored her curiosity. Lucas, his cousin, had arrived quietly. Leela had met him once before at a family wedding. Brief hellos and polite conversation, nothing that demanded attention. And yet, seeing him now, standing with a reserved posture at the edge of the living room, she felt the air itself hold its breath. "Hi," Lucas said, his voice measured, careful. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Lila shook her head, forcing a calm smile. "Not at all. We were just relaxing." The words sounded too hollow to her own ears, but she let them hang in the space, soft as a sigh. He moved further into the room, his shoes making almost no sound on the polished floor. There was an elegance in the way he carried himself, restrained and subtle, yet unmistakably present. Lila felt a curious mixture of caution and curiosity. She wanted to look away, yet something urged her to notice the details, the slight twitch of his hand, the thoughtful way he scanned the room, the quiet way he settled near the window. Tomas, sensing the tension, offered Lucas a seat on the sofa. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, eyes flicking between Lila and Lucas, as if noticing something she hadn't yet voiced. Lucas nodded, sitting with a straight back, hands resting gently on his knees. "Thank you. It's been a long drive," he said, and she caught a trace of fatigue beneath the composed tone. Lila went to the kitchen, pouring a cup of tea for herself, pretending the clink of porcelain would distract her from the quiet weight in the room. She returned and took a chair opposite Lucas, feeling the air between them charged with an unspoken question. He spoke of the drive, of the road winding past sleepy towns, and she listened, noting the way he spoke. Thoughtful pauses, carefully chosen words, a subtle vulnerability that made the evening seem suspended in a soft glow. There was a moment when their eyes met, brief and hesitant, and Leela realized she had been unconsciously holding her breath. He gave a small smile, almost imperceptible, and she felt a ripple of calm pass through her. Yet, behind the calm, there was that strange tension, the sense that something was quietly stirring, shifting the very shape of the evening. I glanced at Tomas, who had sunk into the sofa, quietly observing, his attention not intrusive but gentle. Leela realized she felt protective over this fragile moment, this understated intimacy of shared space. The conversation continued softly, punctuated by laughter that seemed to hover in the room rather than breaking it. And then, as if sensing the delicate balance, Lucas tilted his head, as though noticing something unseen in the light falling across the room. His eyes lingered on Leela's face, not in any way that felt awkward, but as if searching for a subtle truth. The clock ticked on, its steady rhythm grounding the quiet tension, and Leela felt a soft shiver of anticipation. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't excitement. It was something in between, a whispered curiosity that refused to be ignored. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. As the evening deepened, Lucas shifted slightly, leaning back with a thoughtful expression. Lila noticed a shadow of hesitation in his posture, something unspoken that seemed to hover over the space between them. And just as she opened her mouth to speak, the lights flickered briefly, plunging the room into a softer darkness. It was in that moment, the subtle shift, that Lila realized nothing about tonight would remain ordinary. The soft flicker of the lights lingered longer than usual, leaving shadows dancing along the walls. Lila adjusted her chair, feeling the subtle weight of the evening press against her chest. Something about Lucas's quiet presence had shifted the rhythm of the house, and she couldn't quite name it. It was as if the air itself was holding a secret, one that hovered just beyond reach. Tomas, ever the anchor in moments like this, offered a warm smile. "Would you like some coffee, Lucas?" he asked, rising to the kitchen. Lila noticed how his movements were calm and deliberate, trying to smooth the edges of tension she couldn't quite define. "I'd love that," Lucas replied, his voice soft but steady. There was a pause, brief and fragile, before he added, "I hope it's not too late." Lila shook her head, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not at all. It's still early evening." Her words sounded rehearsed even to her own ears, but she didn't care. She was aware of every tiny detail, the way the curtains moved with the faint draft, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath them. Lucas's eyes followed Tomas into the kitchen before resting on Lila again. She felt that same quiet searching in his gaze, the sense that he was trying to understand the rhythm of the home, of the lives that moved within it. She wondered what he saw in the space she inhabited daily, what he noticed that others overlooked. "I've always liked old houses," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. "They carry stories, even in their quietest corners." Lila's lips curved into a small smile. "Yes," she murmured, "even when no one is speaking, there's a memory in the walls." He nodded slowly, as if acknowledging a truth only they could share in that moment. There was a weight to his words, a delicate introspection that felt unexpected, yet familiar. Lila's mind wandered to the last time she had felt such a calm, contemplative presence. Years ago, before life had grown so noisy and full of obligations. The coffee arrived, the rich aroma filling the room like a comforting blanket. Lila noticed Lucas's hands wrapped around the cup, careful and deliberate, almost protective. She sensed his need for grounding, and for a moment she forgot that he was family, that there were boundaries she would not cross. It was simply a quiet human connection, fragile and tentative. Lila realized she was acutely aware of everything, the subtle rise and fall of Lucas's chest, the muted sound of Tomas's laughter at something trivial, the way the shadows moved across the walls like a slow, graceful dance. She felt herself drawn into the fragile web of the evening, caught between familiarity and curiosity, comfort and suspense. And then, Lucas set his cup down, his fingers lingering just slightly too long on the handle, and for a brief instant, Lila felt as though she had glimpsed something hidden beneath the surface, a hint of a story yet to be told. It was a delicate shift, subtle but undeniable. The room seemed smaller somehow, more intimate, yet expansive in its quiet potential. Lila's heart fluttered, not with alarm, but with an awareness that the night had only begun to reveal its layers. A soft cough from the hallway made her glance toward the doorway. Shadows flickered once again as the lights hummed. Lucas's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the room was suspended, balanced on the edge of something unspoken, something delicate and fragile. And in that stillness, Lila realized the evening was far from ordinary, and that Lucas's quiet arrival had awakened a new rhythm she hadn't anticipated. The night deepened, drawing a gentle veil over the house. Lila moved to the window, brushing her hands over the glass, tracing the faint patterns of condensation left by the evening chill. Outside, the street lights glimmered softly, casting warm circles of light across the garden. She could feel the quiet tension of the room lingering behind her, a presence that refused to dissolve even in the calm of the night. Lucas followed her gaze, standing quietly at a respectful distance. He didn't speak, only watched, and in that silence, Lila felt a subtle sense of companionship, It was as if the world outside had slowed down, leaving only them and the faint murmur of Tomas cleaning up in the kitchen. She appreciated the pause, the gentle space that allowed thoughts to breathe. "You've always liked evenings like this, haven't you?" Lucas asked, his voice a whisper of warmth against the quiet. Lila turned slightly, startled by the softness of his tone. "I think I do," she admitted. "There's something about the stillness that feels honest." She paused, searching for the right words. "Like it reveals the edges of things we often overlook during the day." He nodded, as if understanding her completely without needing more explanation. "I know exactly what you mean," he said. "It's as if the night is patient enough to let us see ourselves clearly." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, sharing the silence that carried weight far greater than any conversation could. Lila felt her heart settle, the steady rhythm of the evening providing comfort in a way she hadn't anticipated. She realized that she hadn't expected to feel such a connection, even through a quiet presence. Tomas's voice drifted from the kitchen. "I'll leave you two to your thoughts," he said lightly, the faint clink of dishes following his words. "I'll be upstairs if you need me." Lila nodded, watching him retreat. She felt a wave of gratitude toward her husband, who always seemed to sense the subtle shifts of the household and the emotional nuances of everyone in it. With Tomas gone, the room felt smaller, the space between her and Lucas more pronounced, yet still filled with an unspoken curiosity. "I've noticed," Lucas said quietly, breaking the silence, "that you've made this house so welcoming. It feels lived in, yet peaceful, not an easy balance to strike." Lila smiled, a soft warmth spreading across her chest. "I like it that way," she replied. "It should feel like a home, not just a building. I think the way we live in it matters more than anything else." He nodded, eyes thoughtful. "There's a lot to be said for that. The feeling of safety, of comfort. It's rare these days." Lila felt a soft flutter in her chest, a delicate awareness of how much presence and attention mattered. Lucas wasn't loud. He didn't demand space or attention, yet his quiet observation made the room feel alive in a different way. She wondered what stories he carried with him, what memories had shaped his reserved demeanor, and how this evening had become a moment of subtle revelation for them both. The clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time without disturbing the fragile calm. Lila caught herself stealing glances at Lucas, noticing the way his expression softened in the light, the faint crease of thought on his brow, and the careful way he adjusted his posture, as if aware of her attention. "I always wondered," he said after a while, his voice low, "how people manage to carry their histories without letting them weigh too heavily. Some do it with grace, others not so much." Lila's gaze lingered on him, curious. "Do you mean yourself?" she asked gently. He shrugged slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Perhaps," he admitted. "Or maybe everyone. We all have our quiet burdens, don't we?" She nodded, understanding more than words could convey. There was a vulnerability in admitting burdens aloud, even softly, and she felt privileged to witness it in the safe stillness of the night. It made the evening feel sacred, a small sanctuary carved out of ordinary life. The silence returned, filled only by the soft rustle of the curtains and the muted hum of the world outside. Lila felt a subtle shift in the energy between them, a quiet awareness that this night, this conversation, and even Lucas's simple presence had changed something imperceptibly in her heart. And then, just as she began to lean back into her chair, Lucas's gaze dropped for a fraction of a second to something in the corner of the room, his expression tightening ever so slightly. Lila followed his line of sight, curious and unsettled, but saw nothing out of place. Yet the unspoken tension returned, subtle and insistent, threading its way through the calm of the night. It was the kind of small, quiet moment that promised the revelation of deeper truths, weighing patiently beneath the surface, and Lila realized that the night had only begun to reveal the complexity of what was unfolding. The house seemed quieter now, though Lila could feel the subtle hum of life around them. Even with Tomas upstairs, there was a sense that the evening had shifted into something softer, more deliberate. She sipped her tea, feeling the warmth seep into her hands, and let her eyes wander across the room. Lucas sat opposite her, quiet but attentive, as if he were listening not only to her words, but to the rhythm of the space itself. "You've made this corner of the house so cozy," Lucas said softly, glancing around. "It feels safe in a way that's rare." Lila smiled faintly, letting her gaze linger on the familiar patterns of the furniture and the gentle shadows cast by the lamp. "I like for people to feel at home," she replied, "even when they're just visiting." He nodded, his eyes reflecting a thoughtful calm. "You've done that beautifully."
It makes everything else seem lighter, more manageable. The quiet between them felt full, a gentle pulse of shared understanding. Lila realized she had been holding her breath, consciously and unconsciously, since Lucas arrived. The subtle energy of his presence had drawn her in, and she found herself observing every nuance: the tilt of his head, the way his hands rested on his knees, the small, careful gestures that betrayed thoughtfulness. "Do you come here often?" she asked again, softly, more out of habit than curiosity. Lucas's gaze held hers for a brief moment before he replied, "Not as often as I should. Life has a way of carrying us away from family, from the moments that matter." Lila nodded slowly, understanding more than the words conveyed. She felt a quiet kinship with him, a shared acknowledgement of the delicate balance between distance and connection. There was something comforting in the familiarity, even if it was tempered by restraint. The room seemed to breathe with them, the gentle hum of the clock, the muted flicker of the lamp, the subtle creak of the floorboards as Lucas shifted slightly. It was a small symphony of life, intimate and tender, that made the evening feel suspended outside of ordinary time. "You've always been able to make a house feel like home," Lucas said quietly, almost to himself. "I wonder how many people notice that, how many people really see it." Lila's heart stirred. She recognized the honesty in his words, the quiet admiration without expectation. It was a rare moment of clarity, a soft acknowledgement of effort and care that often goes unnoticed. She smiled, not needing to speak, letting the unspoken connection linger in the air between them. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the walls, creating patterns that seem almost alive. Lila felt the familiar pull of introspection, noticing the way the room seemed larger and smaller all at once, filled with presence yet intimate, expansive yet contained. She caught herself stealing glances at Lucas, observing the thoughtful expression on his face, the subtle lines that hinted at his contemplative nature. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "the quietest moments hold the most weight. They carry things we might overlook in the noise of the day." Lila nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "Yes, it's in those small, subtle moments that life often speaks the loudest." A faint rustle from the hallway reminded them that Tomas was still nearby, and Lila felt a fleeting tug of hesitation. She realized she had been lost in observation, in the delicate rhythm that Lucas brought to the space. There was no need for conversation, only presence, and it was enough. Lucas's eyes met hers again, and in that glance she felt the faintest stir of something unspoken, something that hovered just beyond explanation. It was not a longing, nor a desire, but a recognition of shared humanity, of quiet connection. The soft tick of the clock was joined by the gentle hum of the refrigerator, a lullaby of domestic life. Lila felt herself relax into the rhythm, aware of the subtle tension that lingered, the invisible thread connecting them in this delicate, suspended space. And then, without warning, Lucas shifted slightly, his gaze catching something behind her, something she couldn't see. The movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it pulled her attention, sharp and sudden. She turned slowly, heart flickering with curiosity, only to find the shadows had moved, leaving the room unchanged, but the sensation remained, a whisper of anticipation. It was in that fragile moment, with the night deepening and the room holding its quiet breath, that Leela realized the evening was far from ordinary. Something unseen had begun to stir, and she sensed that the night would not simply pass quietly. The house was wrapped in a gentle, almost sacred quiet as midnight approached. Leela lingered in the living room, the soft hum of the clock and the faint rustle of curtains in the draft creating a lullaby that seemed to echo the delicate rhythm of her thoughts. She felt Lucas's presence beside her, calm, grounded, and yet still carrying the subtle weight of quiet introspection that had marked the evening from the very start.
"You've made this feel peaceful," Lucas said, his voice low, careful, almost reverent, like it's a pause from the rest of the world. Lila smiled softly, the warmth spreading through her chest. "That's all I ever hope for," she replied. "A little pause, a little clarity, a place where people can just be." He nodded, eyes lingering on hers, carrying an unspoken acknowledgement of the evening they had shared. It wasn't dramatic, and it wasn't loud, but there was a depth to the quiet connection, a subtle intimacy built from shared presence rather than words. She realized that moments like this, fleeting and fragile, were the ones that left the longest impressions. Tomas appeared at the doorway, a gentle smile on his face. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said softly, leaning against the frame. "But it's late. I should let you two rest." Lila nodded, feeling a small surge of gratitude for his attentiveness. "We're just talking," she said, though the conversation had been more silence than words. It was enough. It had always been enough. Lucas shifted slightly, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. "I should head upstairs too," he said. "It's been a long day, and I don't want to keep you up." Lila felt a flutter of something unspoken, a quiet tug of wistfulness at the thought of losing the subtle rhythm that had grown between them tonight. She nodded, standing and smoothing her sweater, forcing herself to take a steadying breath. As he moved toward the stairs, she noticed the slight hesitation in his step, the careful way he lingered just a moment longer than necessary. It was as if the house itself had softened its edges for him, allowing him a place in its gentle embrace. The hallway light cast a warm glow, stretching shadows along the walls, and for a moment Lila found herself wishing the night could remain suspended in this calm, reflective space. She realized she would remember this evening for a long time, not for anything dramatic or extraordinary, but for the quiet sense of understanding and connection it had offered. Returning to her chair, she sank back into its familiar comfort. Tomas came to sit beside her, draping a soft arm over her shoulders. "It's been a long day for all of us," he murmured, "but I think tonight was good." "Yes," she agreed, leaning into him. "It was quietly extraordinary." The clock ticked softly in the background, marking the slow passage of midnight. Lila's thoughts lingered on Lucas's subtle presence, the way he had moved through the house without disturbing it, and yet left an imprint that would not fade. She understood now that sometimes the quietest arrivals carried the heaviest echoes. A gentle knock at the door downstairs made her glance up, heart fluttering with curiosity and a faint thrill of suspense. She realized that the night was not yet finished revealing its small, delicate truths. Tomas squeezed her hand and smiled knowingly. "I think some nights," he said softly, "remind us that family, and even quiet moments with them, can change the way we see everything else." Lila nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She looked toward the staircase where Lucas had disappeared moments before, and she knew the evening had offered more than conversation or company. It had offered reflection, subtle understanding, and a gentle reshaping of what mattered in the quiet hours. And as the minutes stretched, she felt a soft sense of completion, a calm satisfaction mixed with a delicate anticipation of the days ahead. The house had shifted, subtly yet profoundly, and she knew that this night, This quiet, understated night would linger in my memory like a soft, glowing ember. Somewhere in the quiet of midnight, Lila realized that not all arrivals are loud. Some arrive quietly, yet leave a presence so profound that even the stillest rooms carry their echo. The night held its breath one last time, and then slowly, gently, it exhaled.